to connect already on LinkedIn, so I would urge you all to do that.
Lovely. And Heather, you have said you're happy to take LinkedIn questions directly, haven't you? So if your question isn't answered today, please do connect with Heather. She'll be happy to help you individually. Right, Heather, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Debbie. Okay, so thank you, Daniel, for already connecting with me on LinkedIn, and look forward to connecting with many more of you. So one of the first things I want to dispel immediately is and I touched on it earlier, about export. So having said what I said earlier as well, I'm a small business owner myself, and I've been where you are. And I found out about the Department for International Trade by accident. It has very corporate branding, if you look at the logo at the top there. And as a small business owner, sometimes you can be really intimidated by this. And if you take nothing away from you today, please do not be deterred by government branding. They are set up there. The government are set up to help you become successful. So whether you're engaging with the growth hubs or any government organization, please don't be deterred by their corporate branding. So Department for International Trade, before that it was called UKTI, and to me as a small business owner, I was very intimidated by it, but the support is there for you, and that's what I'm going to show you today. So you can see the branding at the bottom there, Department for International Trade, that's who I work for. Exporting is great is a bit of a tagline that we use, and that's probably the branding that you will see on billboards, here on the radio, so on and so forth. They change that message pretty regularly, but essentially it's the same government organisation. Next slide, please, Debbie. Oh, that's not helpful. Okay, so here we are in 2021. You would have all heard about Brexit, some of the concerns people had about how that was going to affect trade, so on and so forth. And I wish I could sit here and say it's all been resolved. It hasn't. It is going to take some time, but there's lots of measures in place now to help overcome some of those challenges. So the teething problems have been identified and are in the process of being resolved, and that will be a moving feast as things progress. But there's lots of support available to help you do that, both online and offline, and we'll share some of those resources at the end of the slide deck. But the good thing is now we are out of Europe. It happened. We just need to find out how we can operate within that new landscape. So exporting can be a really great opportunity for any business to stimulate growth within your business, and we're going to talk about what that looks like and why you should consider it. Next slide, please, Debbie. So why businesses should and do start exporting. So these are the kind of top reasons here, and I'll just run through them very quickly. So exporting could be a great way to grow your business outside the UK, and there are some benefits of doing so, spreading your risk. So you could sell, and you don't just have to sell in the UK and then export. I work with businesses that sell overseas only. Their market is overseas rather than the UK. But again, if you've got an identified demand for your product in the UK, it makes sense to look to see who else wants to buy that product or service overseas. So it's a great way of growing your business and therefore your profits. The vulnerability, again, you're spreading your risks. So for it could be a great way of extending the life of a product. So you could be, the UK could be a saturated marketplace for your product or service, but you could move it overseas and find a whole new client database. And of course, if you're if the UK is struggling, that might not be the case in America or France or Germany. So it spreads the risk of your business throughout the world. And again, that follows the next point there, to ride out economic downturns. It's true to say, I've worked with businesses where they haven't had a demand for their products in the UK, but they've had a very definite, clearly identified demand further afield. The last point there, penultimate point there, smooth out seasonal fluctuations. This can be good if you've got a seasonal product, Christmas decorations being the obvious one. A Christmas decoration in the UK could be easily pivoted to be a Diwali decoration in India, so on and so forth. There's lots of reasons why you can spread your demand for your products or services down to seasonal demand. Next slide, please, Debbie. So why businesses, oh, hang on. Why do businesses should and do start exporting? The most common reason working with businesses is purely because the boss says so. There's a lot of kudos to being seen as an international company, and quite often a lot of the businesses that we work from, it's just because they've looked at some of the advantages of that preceding slide and they thought, yes, let's do that. And then ultimately the boss says, yes, let's do it. Next slide. What are the benefits? So again, this links in, it's a great way to grow your business because if you've got customers in the UK, you've already got an identified demand for those products or services. It's really a question of finding where else in the world might like that widget, that product, that service that you're selling. So the economy of sales that can generate more profits are clearly identified this. If you're purchasing 100 widgets to use in your own manufacturing process in the UK, you can increase that by exporting by, let's say, 20%. So you go from purchasing 100 widgets to 120. It gives you that opportunity to start negotiating with your supplier for a better price, better discount rate, better terms on that additionality that you're buying. So it's a way of, that's just essentially a simple tool for increasing your economies of scale. Next slide. So it increases the margin on all of your purchasing and sales rather than the individual. Exposure to new markets, competitions, and new ideas. Again, it's the easiest way to grow your business is to create a product or service and sell more of it to more people and buy it at a better rate. So again, by doing that, it exposes you to a new marketplace. And by doing so, you're able to sell more stuff to more people. It's worth mentioning the cultural development of your business and your individuals. There's a lot of kudos to being seen and recognised as an international business. And remember, international could be selling to Europe, of course, being our closest neighbour. And it could be a great way of raising your profile of your business, and it helps with recruitment as well. If your ambitions for your business is to grow, again, if you can position yourself as an international business, you can attract and retain the best talent too, and it just gives you more kudos, and it becomes self-fulfilling. The bigger you are, the more international presence you have, the more that generally the experiences is more people want to do more business with you. And again, increased publicity for the business and all your brands being seen as an international business, especially when you can have an internationalized website, which is all part of the journey, and there's all funding to support that along the way as well. And it can increase your morale amongst your staff. More about that later. So if you're thinking of exporting, there are a couple of watch outs that we would really encourage you to consider. Having worked with businesses, it's a big world out there, and where do you start? And the trick to exporting successfully is to have a really clear idea of why and where you want to go. And really that's at the heart of what we do at Department for International Trade. We help you through evidence and through research to highlight and identify where you're likely to be more successful. And I'll come back to that later. So first thing is the why. Why do you want to export? Have a clear idea. It's usually linked to growth, understandably, and we've touched on that in those previous slides. But of course, what you'll need to think about is how or will you have to modify your product or service for that new international marketplace. So it's the why and then the how, and then consider what extra resources or what capacity constraints will you need to address it. It's not so bad if it's just you know, small gains. You can probably do that internally, but if it's something that becomes much larger, you'll need to think about what capacity constraints there will be on your business and how you will manage them. How long will it take? An easy you know, a quick export win would be for any one of you to receive an inquiry from France for your product or service. Pre-Brexit, it would be a question of just shoving it in an envelope and probably putting it in the Royal Mail. The reality is quite different now, but it's still achievable. But think about, you know, what's involved, thinking about what's involved and how would that look, and who have you got the resources internally to do it, or is it something that you need to think about by resourcing outside? Costs. There are costs associated with exporting. You need to consider where the money's coming from and how you're going to manage that going forward, especially when you start taking and making payments, and more about that later on. And perhaps lastly, who will carry out the research? We hope you'll say Department for International Trade, because that's what we do. We're set up to perform research for you. A lot of the research we do for you will be free of charge, and certainly it will increase your success rates of exporting, because if you try and export to the world all at once, all at the same time, it's going to be challenging. Far better to perform some really good, in-depth, accurate research and find out where you're most likely to be more successful. And then from that point, you can scale it out from that one point. So the research, I would say at this point, if any of you are thinking of research, if anything of exporting, the first thing to do is perhaps really look closely at the research. And you're not alone. A lot of the research, I said, we can do for you, and it's free at that point of entry. Next slide, please, Debbie. Preparing to export. These are kind of the 6 points that we've covered in the previous slide. Think about the why. Why do you want to export? Be really clear on the why. What products or services have you got that would be suitable for export? And think about what modifications that you may need to do or have to do to be successful. Think about the capacity, who's going to do it. How you're going to do it, whether you're going to work individually or manage the process internally, or you're going to work with partners. Think about the money. How are you going to get the money together to make your exporting successful? And think about who your support partners should be. They're the kind of 6 pointers. So let's go back to look at them. Which markets are you going to start in? It's a huge world. The more successful exporters are the ones that look at the world in a bit more of a granular level, and make some selections based on the research and the intelligence that's out there. So my top tip would be really think about the research. It's fair to say, obviously, when you look at the map of the world, we are closest to Europe. They are our closest neighbours. Our advice has always been to look at our closest neighbours first. Oh, have you lost me? Let's just hang on. My light's gone off. But
you're still there.
Oh, my light's gone off. Let me just. Can everyone see me? You don't really need to see me. It'll come on eventually. So really look at your. So the advice pre-Brexit was always look at Europe as our closest neighbours. They're certainly making it a bit more challenging just recently. The direction of travel will be that will settle down. But you may have just seen recently on the news as last night, Boris was talking about India-China, a huge capacity for British-made goods and services in that region. And it's likely that will be our focus going forward. It's that direction of travel. So it's really a question, we'll have to watch that space and see, but it all starts with performing research. Next slide, please. So what product modifications must you make? So a great example on this slide down there, here is right-hand, left-hand drive. There's no point trying to sell left-handed cars in a right-handed country, so on and so forth. And that's the sort of support that we can give you at DIT. That's where you come to us and we can absolutely help you with what product modifications you must make or consider making to be successful in the country that you're looking to export in. A couple of examples across the page. You know, Morocco, they don't like burger buns, but they'll eat the same food if it's presented slightly different. These are all the cultural differences that you won't necessarily think about but our locally based international trade advisors are actually at the coalface in those countries and will be able to advise you accordingly. So it becomes intelligence-led rather than you thinking, yeah, I've got a great jam, and if I sell it in China, it'll fly off the shelves. Working with the Department for International Trade, it may well be say, yes, it's a great jam, but they won't have this. It's a great jam, but there's no demand in China. Why not Germany? And then we can talk to you about specifics such as branding, labeling, and all of that necessary information that you'll need to proceed. Which routes to market are the most appropriate? Again, you know, you need to think about your shipping, how are you going to do it, where you're going to go, where you're going to go, how you're going to get there, what is most appropriate for your product or service becomes particularly important if you're looking to export food or drink, because you need to start wondering about, you know, you need to start factoring how your product's going to travel, whether it needs to be chilled, whether it needs to be frozen, what the local restrictions are in those countries that you're operating. So again, it's really intelligence-led advice that will really, again, help you avoid those mistakes that first-time exporters make generally because they haven't done sufficient market research. Be really clear about your positioning, pricing, and margins. I've worked with businesses that they sell a product in the UK at $19.99. And they think, well, we can sell it in Germany for the same sort of price. And the reality is quite different, of course. There are costs associated with market, not just relating to the foreign exchange. It's all about thinking about what the local taxes might be as well, because ultimately they are going to affect your margins. So think about your product, your price, your place, and your promotion, because that will help with your positioning. And that's what a detailed export action plan will help you produce. So starting to export, in which markets are you going to start? Like I said, it's very difficult to answer this question without doing the research. And that starts off with a conversation with us and our marketing department to look at what your product is and find out, you know, what's happening in that area, and identifying the right place for you to perhaps do a kind of test and report, and to find out whether it's going to work for you in that area. Think about what product modifications you will make. There will be some. We showed a big example there being the cars, of course. Generally, I would assume not many of you are going to be making cars, but it may be as simple as labeling. But again, knowledge is power, and you need to know what that might be. The routes to market, so B2B, are you going to sell business to business or business to consumer? And there are a host of others in between. So generally, if you're looking to sell in the UK, you would only think about B2B or B2C. When you start looking overseas, you need to start thinking about, you know, would you use an agent to sell your product service, a distributor, a reseller, fulfillment house? And these are all things that you need to consider and go through with the features and benefits of either or. And I would say businesses that I work at, the first time exporters, they generally go down the business to consumer route. Certainly pre-Brexit, worked with several businesses where they were just making something, and that they would get an inquiry from the website or some social selling platform, and just pop it in a parcel, in an envelope, and post it overseas. That is still possible, but there's a process that you need to go through to make that run seamlessly for your client, which is essentially what it's about. Because if you can make it as easy and seamless for your clients overseas, they'll come back. Next slide, please, Debbie.
Some of these ones appear to be duplicated at the beginning, but the second ones are not. So from
right. Okay, so to be clear, we are here. Are you clear on your positions, pricing, and margins? We talked about that. The next slide there. Do you understand cross-border logistics and documentation? This ties in with what I said about who you're going to sell to. There are several options available to you, and it's about being aware of them, because it all comes back to making it a seamless process for your client. Because if it's not, they won't come back. And the penultimate point there, have you decided who will travel to your target markets? Again, support from DIT, or Department for International Trade, can help you with that. There used to be trade missions and trade fairs, and these are available to businesses, and that can help you meet your buyer events overseas. So what do you do? What help is available? That's you if you're thinking of exporting. So these are recognised as the support organisations that are out there. So Department for International Trade, that's me and a host of us. We operate overseas throughout the world. So what that means for you, it means that you've got access to your next customer in Italy or your next customer in Australia. And there are a team of ITAs locally based in each country throughout the world. Apart from Papua New Guinea, I only found that out this morning. And our role is to help you successfully export. So it could be as simple as introducing you to the ambassador of that country, or it could be alerting you to a trade mission that's going into that country. But it all starts with that conversation to find out where you're likely to be most successful. Exporting is not generally a quick win. It takes investment, it takes some time, and you can increase your chances by making it an intelligence and research-led opportunity for your business. So Department for International Trade is the obvious support organisation to engage with right at the front end, because a lot of our resources are aimed specifically at you. Chamber of Commerce's, so there again, they can help you with all of the paperwork. So once you start exporting and you need some help with the paperwork, there is some, they can help with all the rules of conformity. It's a paid for service, but they take away and manage that headache of complying with a lot of the paperwork. The FSB, so Federation of Small Business, and the Institute of Directors, again, they've got export-specific departments and memberships that are worth knowing about. The Institute of Export and International Trade, that's a membership body, again, that's designed to help individuals and businesses that are looking to export. Freight forwarders, shippers and hauliers, again, if you're exporting large amount of stuff, they will be your new best friends, because they'll be the ones that is moving your goods and services over abroad. And again, they will manage a lot of the process of the paperwork side. HMRC, always a bit of a dirty word, but they are your friends too. It's fair to say they've come into quite a lot of criticism just recently because of Brexit. But I have to say, I've used their online facility to ask questions, and it's been nothing short of exemplary. Sometimes you have to wait, but you can ask a simple question, and it's probably a robot to be fair, but they answer very specifically, as long as you ask a specific question. Don't go asking 4 or 5. Banks, again, of course, NatWest. Banks are great when you start talking about your foreign exchange requirements. Trade associations and institutes, again, they're always aware that people are exporting, and we need to export more. And then lastly, language and cultural service providers. Probably fair to say they become more specific when you start looking at countries further afield. But again, a lot of the service that they provide, we can provide within Department for International Trade, especially around like internationalization of your website. Next slide, please, Debbie.
Heather, just before we skip to the next slide, guys, I wanted just to let you know about a couple of contacts that we hold. So if you want to speak to somebody at the Chamber of Commerce, Sunny Singh is currently our closest contact. That's for Milton Keynes and Northampton. The FSB, we have the lovely Yvette Lamedy, who works with us to help support you through the FSB. And freight forwarders and shippers, we actually have a chap on programme, Damien Sodal. So again, you can access him through our hub and through the Facebook page if you want to get a little bit more information, or just have a virtual cuppa to pick someone's brains on how it works generally before you start kind of really deep diving into the research.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, just on that note, I have to say, Northamptonshire Chamber of Commerce are brilliant. They're one of the most proactive Chamber of Commerces in the area as far as export concerned, and Sonny's a great guy. So what help, support and funding are available from Department for International Trade? Let's look at this. So the support you can expect from us is access to your own international trade advisor. So that's me. I work with businesses of different size, helping them in their export journey. So that's a free service, and you've all got my contact details at the end of this. Every business or individual that's looking to export has an opportunity to access their own ITA. We run a series of webinars, including market research and e-exporting. So these are all webinars like this, where you can jump on and understand a bit more about the process and start producing some of that market research yourself, or we can signpost you to our own excellent website, where you can download country guides, which will tell you the highlights, what the trends of that each and every country. A very good resource. ITA support is me. The OMI, the Overseas Market Introduction Service, that's an opportunity for you to meet the buyer or attend an overseas trade fair to meet a buyer, to talk to them about your products or services. So again, you would be expected to have an export action plan on that, which is a bit like your own business plan. And on that, you would have already identified your products and services. You'd already identified where you're likely to be most successful, and then you can access the overseas or the OMIS service, where we will make that happen for you. And there's funding to support those overseas visits as well. The Trade Show Access Programme, again, along the same lines, it's a TAP programme. Again, pre-COVID, there were overseas trade shows in different countries, usually targeted at specific products or services. And once you're able to show that you've got an export action plan that demonstrates that you performed due diligence and research, you could essentially apply to go on that programme and attend a trade show to exhibit your goods or services. It's also worth mentioning at this point, because of COVID, we've been doing these online. We had one just recently in Bolivia, of all places, and outstanding. It was an outstanding event. A selection of smaller businesses applied to, if you like, go attend the online trade show for Bolivia, and they got business from it because there's a big demand for British made goods and services, and they're tapping into that. Market visits, a similar sort of thing. It's for those, it's, you know, you can find a trade show of your own that's in a country, and if it meets the criteria, we can help fund that attendance at that trade fair, at that market visit for you.
Heather, do you advertise where the next ones are, or are these just off of the back of the conversations that you have with entrepreneurs? What I'd encourage you all to do is follow Department for International Trade on LinkedIn. You can subscribe to their newsletters and you'll be alerted, and they have an event schedule as well. So if you subscribe to them on LinkedIn and sign up for their newsletter, you'll automatically get sent that information. We really are the jewel. I mean, you know, we are the jewel in the crown as far as business support, because you know, from a business owner's point of, you know, where you are, you don't know what you don't know, and you're relying on partners like the banks, the growth hubs to let you know. And that's why we like partnering with NatWest, because sometimes we get access to a cohort of businesses that need to know about us but don't necessarily know about us because you're so firmly focused on running your own businesses, if you like. UK Export Finance is a subsidiary, if you like, of Department for International Trade. That's the government department that's set up to help businesses manage their export finance. They underwrite it, so it's probably fair to say that's for larger businesses where they're having to incur the cost of export. There's always a delay before exporting and getting paid. Export finance can bridge that gap, and it's underwritten by UK government. Next slide, please, Debbie.
But for the smaller or for the first time exporter, this is the stuff that makes the difference. So you can have a free 30-minute video meeting with me or another one of the ITAs that can spend a bit more time finding out about your business, find out where you are, where you want to be, and then come up with some bespoke support for you. So that's my offer to all of you today. The other great resource is the Export Academy. So again, this is aimed specifically at the first-time exporter. It's a series of 1-hour training webinars where we'll take you on that journey from the why, the how, who do you need, where to go. So it's all of those things that I spoke about at the front of this presentation, with a view to you at the end of it being able to come up with your own export action plan to increase your success. The next Export Academy starts tomorrow. That's tomorrow, and I can, if you're interested, I can send you. If you just Google Export Academy, you'll get through to the right webpage and book your space, or send me an email straight after this, and I'll send you the direct link. The last bullet on this slide is the Internationalization Fund. So this is where the money is. So this is a match-funded grant between £1,000 and £9,000. It's available for any individual or business that is looking to trade internationally, to get you internationalized, to get you in it operating as an internationalized business. It is match funded, so for you to get 1,000, you have to invest £1,000 of your own money. And it can be very used across a lot of different themes. So website enhancement, so that could be taking your UK specific website, making it internationalized for an international market. So you couldn't use it to get a first website for your business, but you could certainly use it to internationalize your existing website. Translation services, specialist advice, or any travel that you're making in connection to operating overseas. So it's a very flexible fund, but again, it's worth a conversation, but you have to be an SME up and trading already, preferably in the Northamptonshire area. But if it's of interest to any of you, come to me and I'll show you how else we might be able to help with that. Next slide, please, Debbie.
The other thing I would love to interject at that point is if you are already regularly receiving money in other currencies, it might be worth you thinking about a multi-currency bank account that sits alongside your, in our example, the NatWest business account, so that instead of losing money through the conversions each way, what you can do is have a bank account that entirely trades in, let's say, euros. And so you can pay your euro bills out of it, have your money coming in euros, and it sits alongside. So you have full visibility and access, but you're not using your currency transaction changes to lose you money. So something else to think about while we're talking about funding.
So this is what we do. We educate and train new exporters. So that could be you. If you've not exported, if you're not exported yet, this is the role of international trade, is to help you become successful in exporting. We can help you develop an export action plan. Essentially, an export action plan, Debbie knows I'm a fan of the business model canvas, and essentially that would be the methodology that I would generally use. An export action plan is just like a bit like a short business plan, just to explain what your export is going to entail, and we go over those 5 points that we said earlier: the who, the why, the how, and what you need to do. And then we could provide further support to you as they execute that plan. So it's a question of keeping you on track, making sure that you're aware of all the opportunities that that exist out there for you, and we take you on that journey. Each ITA works with a cohort of businesses, and if you like, become your account manager. And it's down to your account manager to really make sure that you're kept up to date with all of the opportunities that are out there. Probably fair to say, most attendees that go to our overseas trade fairs is because the ITA has actually identified that opportunity for that business and said, have you thought about exhibiting at this trade fair? you sound, you know, your products and services fit that criteria. This is where it is, this is the date, and guess what, here's some funding to help support you as well. That's the kind of support that you can expect from an international trade advisor. So that's me. I mean, that's a quick whistle-stop tour of what Department for International Trade can and does do. But again, just going back to where I said, please, please, please do not be put off by the branding, the .gov branding, because it's fair to say every business that I work with, and certainly my own experience over the years has always been, I didn't think it was for me. And my, you know, the takeaway from this is most definitely for you. If you've got an appetite to export, we are definitely here. We're open for business to help you export more successfully. Any questions?
Thanks, Heather. I'm going to stop sharing the screen just so that you can see each other more clearly. Bring your contact details back up at the end for anybody that didn't grab them. So we've had no questions in the chat. I think everyone was blown away by the amount of information. So thank you. Guys, come off of mute if you've got a specific question.
I'll go on.
Go for it, Dan.
So my barrier so far has been the different messages in terms of what we've got to actually do. So I've got a jewelry business, it's all e-commerce, it's small parcels, so it's quite easy to ship into Europe. And previously I was, but obviously under the VAT thresholds in each country, but they've now been scrapped. So if I sell one, as far as I'm aware of what I've been told, if I sell one thing in France and one thing in Spain, register for VAT in both of those countries?
No, there is a way. There are ways around that, that's a kind of more Brexit related query, but that isn't the case. If your goods or services, what's your, sorry, Daniel, isn't it? You broke up just as you said. Did you say it was jewelry?
Yeah,
jewelry, and you're selling you're selling direct to consumers, are you? Yeah. No, they what you can do, there's ways around that where you wouldn't have to be VAT registered in each country. That's a question of registering for VAT, obviously in the UK, and they will manage that process for you. But I'll come back to you on that. There's a way around that.
I think as well, does that apply to a couple of other people on the call?
Yeah, you've got Brexit related juries. Yeah, okay.
I'm just going to sort of say, because mine's very specific, so sorry, it's why I didn't want to raise so much today, maybe pick up separately, but I guess I'm a bit similar with Dan. I'm e-commerce. I have actually sold to both the US and France, although I'm sure I haven't done it properly. So it's really about, now I want to do it and really go for it. So it's about making sure I've kind of got all of the elements in place and all the rules ticked, so that I can then, you know, really push it. So it's a bit similar, but yeah.
Yeah, well done. And it's you are, both of you are what we call the accidental exporters, i.e. those clients have come to you and you've responded to it. And that's great, because it's kind of identified that there's a need for your products and services. It's about the process catching up with it, isn't it? To be able to expand it, and there is support for that. But okay, I'll come back. So I'm just thinking, if you can both email me separately with an email, I'll come back to you and answer those specific questions. And I will bring in my colleague, because that is a grey area. And it's probably fair to say that DIT generally do not get involved with HMRC queries and stuff like that, but I can certainly get those answers for you.
Heather, I've just dropped you a bit of a link on LinkedIn, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
If you have time, it would just be great to have a separate chat sort of.
Yeah, sure. Yep, I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. And I just want to clarify, because NatWest have hosted this event and you've signed up, I can't provide your details to Heather because of GDPR. So I know that you're all thinking, why don't you just send it to all of us? Please contact Heather, because I'm not allowed to. Thank you.
That'd be nice. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Heather, do you mind if I ask? My name is Mike. I run a print company. We typically supply name badges, and we would be what you classify as your accidental exporters. So we receive maybe an inquiry from, could be anywhere in the world. So we've shipped items to sort of Kenya or America, or it could be Central Europe and stuff like that. But it's not markets that we're actively trying to get into, but we receive inquiries, and typically if it's of a certain value, we look at it and then try and figure out whether it's worth doing. But every country seems to have its own issues. Is there any tips or advice you give people that receive inquiries from around the world that are not set up to export to them, or things that we should really consider before we agree to take on that business?
I mean, we've got the Exporting is Great website is a great starting place for you to go in, because you can search by country, and on each country you'll be able to find out some really relevant specific information on it regarding VAT, taxation, so on and so forth, the number of people that are selling there, the themes, what are right down to the average income, if you're selling giftware or something like that. So the Exporting is Great website is a great first starting point, and you can look at some specific information per country. The answer to that question, I guess, is as a reactive exporter, you're going to have to make your own judgment, aren't you? Because the cost of sale for your average order, I don't know. I mean, name badges. I mean, I'm amazed, quite frankly, you're getting inquiries from, where did you say?
Kenya, so large hotel resorts and things like that might order, and we typically wouldn't consider it unless it was kind of 4 figures of plus, because of the headaches and the amount of research we'll have to do, and obviously the risk of
being paid,
sending items, being paid or sending items, that far abroad, where we lose so much control over ensuring it gets to destination and things.
Mm-hmm. But how would you fulfill that? Would you do it yourself, or do you use a fulfillment carrier?
We manufacture everything ourselves, but we've got accounts set up with courier company DPD, so they can manage the sort of customs side of it, and obviously the logistics. So that's less of an issue around that, more a question of sort of being paid, the risk factors, or country specifics, or as Dan has mentioned there, with regards to whether you need to now be registered for tax in different countries, or if there's implications around that.
Right. Okay. Again, I'll come back to you, because see, the VAT is something we at DIT we do not get involved with, which is strange, because I honestly think that we should do it, because who better to advise businesses? But essentially, it's the job of HMRC. I've been working with a business just recently that they were worried about the same thing, and they thought that they were going to have to go down through the challenge of registering for VAT in each different country, and of course that does not make sense. And HMRC have come up with a way to manage that. But I will, I'll get that information, get it back out to you. Sorry, it's Mike, isn't it?
Yeah, I've sent you
if you can send me if you've all got my email addresses at the end, on the end slide, are you going to be sending out slides immediately?
If you're happy for me to share the slide pack, I can just send that to everyone who registered.
Yeah, just do that, and then drop me an email with your query, and then I'll come back to you.
Heather, do you have a contact at HMRC? Or obviously once you ring HMRC, you are sat on a massive holding cycle. Any shortcuts?
There is, and I'll get it out to you. So I will, it's a web chat facility, and like you say, it's the best kept secret, and stick with it, because that's all I've been doing, is the questions that I get asked by my the businesses that I work with, where they can't go, I just go away and take that pain from them. It'll be me that sits there and sits on the web chat, but they haven't let me down with their response. But I'll come back with that, and then you can all have it.
I've got one other question, actually. So
go on then.
I actually import the jewelry from China, and then we package it here and things like that. So would that exclude me from any help from DIT?
No, because if you're the challenge you've got is you're not the additionality. So presumably you import from China, and then do you do something to it to make it better, nicer, lovelier, whatever? Yeah. But essentially the country of origin would be China, I guess. Is that what how you're filling your paperwork at the moment?
Well, no. When you say filling in paperwork, I mean, we're not exporting really. So
no, it wouldn't. No, the short answer is it wouldn't exclude you, but there is an organisation that's best placed to help you, called the Manufacturing Growth Programme, or the Manufacturing Growth Service, because they are set up to help manufacturers. So the fact that you're making stuff, and that is lovely jewelry, the Manufacturing Growth Service is a government organisation set up to help manufacturers. So they would be a really good one for you to talk to about getting some help to support you further, and they've got lots of funding. But as far as export is concerned, all you would need to worry about yourself at this point is probably, if you're, I mean, what kind of turnover are you doing at the moment? Is it quite, it's just growing? Sorry?
500,000 in the making.
500,000. Well done you. I mean, don't underestimate how valuable that is. You're a perfect mix for us to work with. But no, what you'd need to do is, if you're looking to scale up your export activities, you need to make sure your processes match it. And one of the big issues I think that you probably, the first obstacle you need to overcome is the processes or the paperwork side of thing, which will be making sure you've got accurate country of origin, because otherwise your parcels will start taking longer to deliver to your clients. Are you still selling business to business, Daniel?
No,
it's all business to consumer.
Yeah.
Sorry, all B2C. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And what's your average order value?
25.
Yeah, so you're under that threshold. So you're doing lots of volume. Yeah, is that right? You're doing lots of volume. So yeah, at this point, it's not going to affect you just yet. But if your average order creeps up, that's when customs will start looking, because you're doing customs declarations. That's when they'll start looking at them more closely once they get over that lower threshold. Okay. But really a good one for you is to join the Export Academy and have a look at some of that, because they cover those terms of the INCO terms, the commercial terms that you'll need to do to make it a seamless transfer.
Great, thank you.
And on the manufacturing part, if any of you haven't already looked into the Manufacturing the Future grant or UK manufacturing grant, there are a couple of new pots available if you are making the product in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
There is a Accessing Grants workshop coming up on the 7th of April. Any other questions? 5 minutes to go.
Ooh, that's good.
Mine was kind of like I suppose a little bit of a similar question, but I've just got a small e-commerce shop and I deal with everything in-house, package it all, send it off. Before Brexit, I was having like a few orders that would be to places like Australia,
Right, yeah,
things like that, and then was sort of told that they're now getting like a tax the other end before they can receive it.
yeah.
So how do I sort this out? What do I do?
Yeah, you need to change the way in which you order, so that you need to put something on your website to say that they have to pay local tax upon delivery, or you need to include it in your price.
So if I was to include the local tax into my price, then when it reaches them the other end, that they won't have to pay it, or how?
That's right. Yeah.
But how do they know that that's?
Because your price to them will have increased to affect that.
But what does Tony need to do to inform customs so that they don't charge it, so that they know it's been paid?
How do customs know?
Again, what's your average order value?
It's sort of like around £15.
So that'll be less, because they shouldn't be paying anything. If it's less than that, they shouldn't be paying anything.
Tony, was it your big wholesale order that got the tax added?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a big order to China, which was like about £2,000. So then there was the tax, but I think that was even before Brexit. But yeah, I just like, even for like smaller orders, I was sort of told that there's a potential for them, like the tax the other end, that they have to pay before they receive the goods. So I don't know what the threshold is, or
it's less than £25, I think. Let me just check that. I mean, you're right. This is going into Brexit. This is going into customs, and but I can answer all these questions for you. But I want to make sure it's accurate. So just drop me an email with the question, because the last thing I want to do is give you an answer to the question that's not correct. But things to do with HMRC and VAT is really down to HMRC. But that's not to say that I can't support you, but I wouldn't want to be giving you the answer to these specific questions here for you to go away and to give you the wrong information. But just drop it to me in email, and then I'll come back to you with the right resource, so that it's absolutely right, because I want to make sure it's right for you.
Solange's saying in the chat that it's €22, but I think it's a great idea for each of you to book that 30-minute consultation.
Yeah, €22, that's it. I always get that pounds and euros confused, sorry.
And I'm sure it changes all the time as well, so please don't worry. 3 minutes until we have to close the call. Has anyone got any burning questions, or shall I reshare that information to contact Heather? In fact, I'll do that anyway. That's the details. I will email out to you the slide pack from today. Heather, if you could email me that link to the HMRC shortcut, I'll add that on as well. Is there anything else that anybody else needs information on added to that pack? I'll share the multi-currency account information in case you want to look at that.
But just a closing point, so Daniel, if you're that sort of turnover, definitely consider the DIT Internationalization Fund. That's a grant funding. Happy to talk to you more about that. If you're thinking of, I don't know, you know, it's like anything else, you've got to be in it to win it. So I'd be very happy to spend a bit more time with you to talk about, you know, how you could best make use of that grant.
Yeah, definitely. I'll reach out with you on.
Yep. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
It might also be worth you speaking to Teresa at MediLink, because arguably, because it's hypoallergenic, and particularly with your new business idea, you might be able to get in under well-being and comfort, because it doesn't have to be medical.
I kind of talked to Teresa and it fizzled out, and I don't remember why, but
I think probably the jewelry is questionable, but the new part,
yeah,
that we're not talking about yet, would be a good conversation.
okay. Thank you.
Any more for any more?
Oh, there's a question on the chat. What's that? €22. Thank you. Yeah.
So it goes without saying, Heather, thank you so much for sharing that today. It's so much valuable information. I think it's difficult because each of our entrepreneurs is at a very different stage, and at the moment they're muddling by in a lot of the cases and maybe not doing it in the most efficient way, but thinking, I'm not actively targeting a country particularly, so I don't know whether I need to put energy, focus and time here. I guess the best conversation is just to pick up your 30-minute consultation so that you can tell them what they need to keep on their to-do list.
Well, I mean, if all of you are happy, what I can ask Debbie to do is just send me your emails address, send me your email addresses, and I can send you like an introductory email that I send out with all the links that I refer to. If you find that useful, I can get that done and get out. If I can get that off Debbie today, I'll get that out to you today, and then we can pick up the specifics as and when you guys want to. But the takeaway from today is, if you're serious about export, you need to speak to the Department for International Trade. We're here to help you. We're open for business, and a lot of our support is free at the point of entry. Does that make sense? Oh, gone big suddenly. Okay.
Right. Guys, thank you so much for your time. If you are happy to dial off, as soon as I've got that information from Heather, I'll send those emails out. If there's anything that you were expecting today that we haven't covered and you'd like
definitely
a follow-up workshop, Heather is at our disposal. So please do let me know how you would like the next workshop shaped, and we can see what we can do. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Are you staying on with me, Debbie?
I am indeed.
All right. Okay.